It is the pink elephant theory. If the guest wants a pink elephant, get them a pink elephant. If you can't find a pink elephant, get a horse, paint it pink, convince the guest it's an elephant. Do whatever it takes to ensure they're happy. That's it. Are they happy? Pink elephant. Chris Adams here with you. Exciting day today. We've got somebody from EAG's team actually here on the podcast with us, and there's going to be no shortage of time not talking on this one. I have the one and only. We call him Kenny G, which has an even better story that we're going to get into in a second. But Kenneth Gonzalez joining us here on the Pink Elephant. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thank you for having me. Most importantly, appreciate it.
Of course, and right now I know you can't see where you are, but you're actually down in St. Thomas right now, right?
Yeah, man. In St. Thomas, getting one of our luxury properties off the ground with Marriott. So super excited. Beautiful place. It's a gorgeous little town, little country. So super excited.
Nice. So, all right, before we get into anything, the name. All right, so Kenny Gonzalez, but you go by Kenny G.
Yeah.
But the reality is there's another Kenny G that people know about, right?
Of course.
He has better hair than you. I mean, that's
I tried. I tried when I was younger. The long locks didn't work for me. It gave me a weird shape to the head, so I had to get rid of it.
No, but wait a second. Let's go to, all right, so the Kenny G that others might know.
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the greatest saxophonists in
saxophone, clarinet.
Right.
Yeah.
To ever pick it up, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You actually played the sax, right?
I did. Specialized with the soprano saxophone. I played it all through middle school. I was I was a specialist. I was actually pretty good. I definitely was. And as funny as it may sound, I got the name Kenny G from my friends way after the fact that I played saxophone. In middle school,
did you feel an immense amount of pressure? Did you feel like a huge amount of like a weight sitting on you every time you'd pick that instrument up?
I'm going to be frank with you. It took me a while to put two and two together because I wasn't as invested into it as my family wanted me to be. No, but I picked it up. Wasn't really sure about it, Then the whole Kenny G thing kind of came up, but no one really called me that. So it's funny because once people started calling me Kenny G, I was able to share that connection. Because the first question people have when they hear me say Kenny G, they're like, "Oh, do you play saxophone? Are you going to serenade us like Kenny G?" And I respond, I can, and that always throws them off because they don't expect it.
I like it. At some point, I feel like we should do a podcast with the other Kenny G and you, just to talk about, does he have the same challenge and weight sitting on him?
Yeah, I think he probably doesn't, right? And then the second question that people have after I say I played saxophone, they're like, "Well, can you play as good as him?" And the conversation always is very short. It's a simple answer.
A ridiculous
it's a no.
question, anyways.
Yeah, it's a no.
It's like, yeah, you play basketball. Are you good as Michael? Like, really, it's a ridiculous question. Anyway,
yeah.
All right, so now let's move past your younger years and the Kenny G days and move into where we are now. So now you're a part of EAG. You're on our team, an account exec, and really a specialist. Though I will say this: you are our jack of all trades. You are the Swiss Army knife for EAG, right? You are the guy that no matter what's going on, I'm like, drop Kenny in because you own it, you master it quickly, and have been an unbelievable asset to EAG and just the growth around our brand as well. I'd love to talk about, we'll get into kind of what we do now, what you specialize in now, but how did it's an amazing story, and I want people to understand because I think how you got into this industry speaks volumes about what the possibilities are for others and what hospitality can do for you. Because I think we all know right now that the industry is struggling with a labor shortage and people not feeling that why should I go into that industry? What's the purpose? All I hear is long hours and people don't love you and all these things. So talk to us about your journey and how you got to this point and how you even got into this industry.
Yeah, it's I'm going to take you back a few years. So moving from Tennessee to South Florida, never really had a job in the hospitality world or the industry as a whole in really any sense. I got to live in Orlando for a little bit. I worked for Disney. We won't get into that part. But once I moved down to Miami, I had to find a job. It was Miami's an expensive city. I was 17, I think, turning 18, and I needed to get some kind of money coming in. So I went on a search for a while, and sending applications. I'm on Indeed, all these websites that you would use to be able to find a job. And I think the story is important to know, especially for the purpose that you brought up, Chris, is that, I wasn't one of those that were able to finish college, right? I went to college for a few semesters, realized very quickly that it wasn't specifically for me. So moved down to South Florida, Miami. And I think at that point, people were still very heavy on diplomas and some type of showpiece that you were educated, right? So I'm looking for jobs, not really getting any responses. And about 4 weeks into living in Miami and trying very hard to find something, I resorted to a last option, which was Craigslist, right? And you and I know both Craigslist back in 2009, 2010 was a weird place. So trying to find a good job there was really just the only thing that I could do at that point. And I'll never forget, I saw this ad on there for beach valet. Coming from Tennessee, especially from where I'm from, there weren't a lot of places where valet was very prominent, right? So the first thing I think of beach valet is, well, I'm going to be working on a beach, and I'll figure out the valet part, right? I had some association of parking cars, but that's what I really thought that I was doing. And boy, was I wrong. So I responded to an ad, and the very next day, a gentleman by the name of Edgar Hidalgo reached out to me. And a mentor of mine now at this point, he responded and said, "Hey, can you be behind?" And kind of going into your background, he's like, "Can you meet me behind the Ritz-Carlton in South Beach?" So I'm like, this is it, right? I'm super excited. So I drive from West Kendall all the way to Miami. It's like 40 miles, maybe give or take. And I'm waiting on the backside on the beach of the Ritz-Carlton. First time ever being at a Ritz-Carlton, by the way. I've never stepped foot inside, but I got to see it. And
Out of
that was,
curiosity,
yeah,
because I don't know the answer to this, how did you show up to that? Like, what were you wearing?
man. You would have thought I was sponsored by Ralph Lauren. I had a button up. I had some slacks on. I had some nice little dress shoes. That was like the best that I had at that point as well. Didn't have a suit, didn't have any sense of professional style, to be frank with you. I just knew that, it looked like I was going to church, and I thought that was going to be good enough.
I like it. I like
So
it.
I show up on the beach, and, I'm just waiting there patiently. And this guy just comes zooming up on a golf cart. "You Kenny G?" Or he said, "You Kenny Gonzalez?" I said, "Yeah, that's me." He said, "Hop in the golf cart." I had my little resume folded in a piece of paper in my hand. Really didn't have much on it, to be frank with you. But I had it, right? In case you would have asked, it would have been a very short read. And I'll never forget, I handed him my resume, and he maybe peeked at it for a second, folded it, and put it right in the golf cart, and we started driving. Now, if you're familiar with South Beach, the Ritz-Carlton to the Lowe's is relatively very close, about a block away. And we were able to pull up to the Lowe's hotel. And he asked me maybe 4 or 5 questions. And he says, "Okay, well, you've got about 3 days to show us what you got." And I said, "Okay, well, what is the job?" Was the question. And he pointed at the beach. He said, "Go walk up to that gentleman there, introduce yourself, and he'll tell you when to report." At that point, I realized that I'm not parking cars. And I was really excited to park cars in Miami, right? I'm thinking all these nice cars, and realized very quickly I wasn't going to park a car, but I was excited to at least be given an opportunity. Well, at that point, I was happy to have a job, right? So I go meet this gentleman, super nice guy who was in the business for a little while, working in the company that I was working with, and he was able to tell me, hey, be here tomorrow, 7 a.m. You got to go to the office, fill out your paperwork, and get your uniform. So I did exactly that. Walked over down Lincoln Road, went to the office building, and then that's when I joined Boucher Brothers. So very next day, I show up to the beach, 7 a.m. I am wearing a white cotton polo, white cotton shorts, white shoes, white socks. I mean, this was 13 years ago, right? That was exactly what people wore that worked on the beach. And let me tell you, Chris, it took me all of about 15 to 20 minutes to realize this might not be it. The heat, the sand, and I still hadn't even started the job yet, like at all. I had just stood there for a minute and said, oh, it's hot. It's hot. So uh, everyone comes out. I start to meet the team, and then we get to work, right? And my training was very, very quick. Hey, grab this stack of chairs, roll it out. Grab this stack of chairs, roll it out. And everything's by hand, very physical. Midday after lunch, I sat on I had a motorcycle at the time. Before I went back out to the beach, I sat on my motorcycle, and it took every bit of me not to drive out of that hotel and never come back. I thought to myself, this isn't it. There's no way that I can do this. I don't want to do this. I don't like it. But, moral compass, I was like, I can't just do that. So I go back out to the beach. We end up shutting down. It was about 500 chairs for about 6 people. It was a lot of work. Never forget, riding home, started to feel the aches and pains of that labor, walking on the sand. Walking on the sand 12 hours carrying equipment, that'll do it to you. I'll never forget. Got to my house, started talking to my father. At that point, I was still living with my parents. And my father tells me, well, just remember, you don't have many opportunities knocking on your door right now. And that kind of weighted with me, right? It was pretty heavy, quick little saying off the cuff that he probably didn't think too much of, but it changed my perception. So never being in hospitality, terrified of talking to the guests, and I mean absolutely terrified, I changed my perception and said, you know what? This is all I have right now. No one's knocking on my door to bring me in to work for them. I might as well show up and do my absolute best. And so I kind of started to apply that mindset. And it took me a while to realize what the industry was as a whole, right? I'm coming from a smaller area in Tennessee, Clarksville, Tennessee, where I was raised. And I think our nicest hotel at that point was a Country Inn and Suites, right? And there's no valet at the Country Inn and Suites. There's no, incredible restaurants, nightlife. None of that is involved at the Country Inn and Suites. So I started to realize, wow, this is a pretty incredible industry. And once I finally started getting comfortable with the guests, and I'm saying after a few weeks of running away from the guests would come out, they would approach the beach hut, and I would go the opposite way for whatever reason I could find to stay away from interacting with the guest. But when I finally built the courage to start dealing with the guest, I really fell in love with that aspect, the guest connection, the building the emotional connection piece, and realizing, man, I can really turn someone's day inside out. So that's when I fell in love with hospitality. And I was very fortunate through my time with Boucher Brothers that I was able to do just that. So that's essentially how I fell in. Thankfully, Craigslist was able to put me on the right track.
So let me ask you, you obviously started, never done it before. When you left Boucher Brothers, what were you doing for them?
So through my time in Boucher Brothers, I held various positions, starting off as a beach attendant, $8 an hour, grew relatively quickly from, assistant manager to manager, from manager to director of operations. I don't think I was even 21 yet when I got to run the largest operation that our company had at that time, which was the Fontainebleau. I was there as the operations manager overseeing a beach operation of 800 chairs, a food and beverage operation that was pumping out incredible amounts of money for a beach hut that does not have a bar or a grill on it. So I went from there to director of operations holistically for the company, specialized in a couple of key openings, kind of putting the boots on the ground to open up some hotels, SLS South Beach, One Hotel, St. Regis, Bal Harbor. just a few to note. And I went from there to regional general manager, as I was overseeing a region for the company, representing our ownership, dealing with about 200 hotel partners. Got to do some really, really cool stuff. So the position that I had after COVID, specifically, was I was running the St. Regis Ball Harbor as the director of operations for the outdoor spaces. So I was running the pool operations, the beach operations, and we needed some support in that specific hotel. So I stepped in to try to basically get it right. Prior to that, right before COVID, I was also the corporate trainer for the company. So traveling around to the states that we were operating in, and just really instilling as much training and development that I could into this younger demographic that the company employs. So I've held many, many different hats within the business.
There's a few things I want to touch on from that story. And the first one is um, the fact that when you started doing it, one, you had no idea that you wanted to do it or you knew
Yep.
nothing about it, right? Yeah, and it was hard. And forget the it was hard emotionally, or I was nervous, or I had anxiety because I didn't really know what I was doing. It was hard work. It was the physical side of what it took to just execute that job. So you take the physical aspect of what was required to do that job. You take the emotional piece of you're young, just trying to figure out life in this at this point, and I just need a job, right? And then you take the anxiety of I'm in a new role. I don't really know what I'm doing yet. And this job requires me to engage and interact with other humans, which can bring anxiety on top of it. So you had multiple things that were saying, like, this probably is not right for you. Everything in your body was telling you, like, like look for something else.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to remember because when we look at where I think a younger look, I've got kids that are at this point in life trying to figure it out. I think we
Hmm.
have people that work within the hotels that we all get to be a part of and help open or operate, and they live in this moment of it doesn't feel right now. It doesn't feel good at the moment. Um, you were getting paid eight something an hour. I'm not making money right now. I'm not driving the car I want right now. And there's all these things that are telling you, you know what? I got to bounce. I need to find something else. And I think the fact that you said, you know what? I don't know why. No, I didn't have some crystal ball that said if I do this, this is what's going to happen for me. But the fact of the matter is, you showed up. You showed up and you simply said, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but what I'm going to do is the best I possibly can. And I think that there's a huge lesson to be learned in that right there. And I had a very similar situation of how I got into this industry and how I launched the company. And I look at where you are now, which wasn't that long ago, the story you just told, right? You're not talking about a 30, 40-year process of work my way up the ladder for 45 years to get to X. This is a pretty short amount of time to stumble into something. And the lesson to take from it, from anybody that's potentially listening and trying to figure life out, or maybe it's tough right now, is are you showing up and are you giving it everything you have to be the absolute best? And
Yeah.
I think if that's your motto in life, no matter what you're doing, is that regardless of what's going on, I'm just going to show up and just be the best I can. I think that
Hmm.
right there could be like literally just, get that tattooed on you somewhere because that's the motto.
For sure.
If you live by that, you're going to be okay.
You're
Right. I
good.
mean,
You're good.
so that's the one thing I think that you just talked about that really it resonated with me. The second thing is Boucher Brothers. And I want to give mad props to look, they're a great company. I have so much respect for them, and you still have an amazing relationship with Michael and the team over there. The fact that they're able to identify talent, and then I'm gonna use a word that typically probably isn't used in a positive connotation, but I'm going to use it in a very positive way. They find talent and they exploit it. They
Mm-hmm.
find talent, they identify it, and they go, no, no, I see something in you that you don't realize you have, and we're about to turn you into something that you're supposed to be. And the fact that they did that and they invested in you, and I know for a fact we've had stories how much they invested in you over the course of the decade that you were with them. It speaks volume to who they are as a brand, and I think it speaks
Oh,
volume
absolutely.
to how much they've grown as a company. And we kind of live by that rule at EAG: just do the right thing, right? Just yeah, it's going to cost, but Chris, it's going to cost us money. Just do the right thing. Do the
Yeah.
right thing, and I believe that the universe, God, whatever you believe in, is going to repay you 100-fold in the long run. And I think Boucher Brothers continues to see that kind of success because you are living proof of what they represent, who they are as a brand. And so, I just want to make sure that they get all the kudos and respect that they deserve, because you're walking proof of what they develop and create. So I know you can speak hours about Michael and the team over at Boucher Brothers.
Yeah, no, I tell you, you're right on the nose with that, right? These guys started, 30 plus years ago with a few chairs on the beach, right? And 25 cents a chair is where they started. And they were the first managers in their company. They were the first ones pulling the chairs, setting up the towels. And the gentleman who I mentioned earlier was the one who found me and interviewed me, if we call it an interview, and I give him a hard time for it every time. But he's a product of the exact same environment that I came from as well, and it was literally, that gentleman has a very similar background to me. He came in at the age of like 16, worked his way up to GM. He's now the COO of the company. And he found me when he was a GM, took me under. Michael finally, when I started to make a little bit of noise, because once I broke out of my shell, I was definitely loud and proud about it. And I know there's no shortness of that. And then Michael took me under, and Michael started to guide me. And let there be no mistake, it was a very, very long 10 years. I was learning in every aspect of the business. I was learning everything new day by day. I didn't have a pamphlet. I didn't have a book. I didn't take a test. It was all on hand experience and just time that was invested through my leaders, right? And I pay the most respect and love to Edgar and Michael for being the ones to really show me the way. And there were many times where both of them, I'm sure, wanted to smack me upside my head. I know that's a fact, right? Because I wasn't perfect by any means, but I think the
Can you
most
speak to
important.
that for Can you speak to that for 1 second, and the fact that over the course of, let's just call it a decade, right, of going from where you started to where you became
Mhm.
within Boucher, I use that term, failing doesn't make you a failure, right? That process of learning, how often, and I'm asking a question on purpose because I know the answer. How often did we make mistakes? How often did you make mistakes in that process? But those mistakes didn't determine your future. They were part of the process to get you where you needed to be. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, there was definitely the opportunities, the failures, they came in droves when they did, and they were tough, right? You got to think about it. I'm a young kid at that point, finally getting into my 20s, getting some real responsibility. Like I said, I was running the largest operation for the company at a very young age, and of course, it wasn't going to be perfect, but the level of patience and care and listen, you messed up and you messed up big, but let's sit down and make sure that it never happens again. And let me show you why. Let me explain to you why.
But I will tell you, I think, and again, this is a leadership lesson. You know me,
Hmm.
and I think our industry right now is at a crossroads. And if I'm on one more panel, if I speak at one more conference, and the number one topic that comes up, labor, 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 what do we do? What do we do? Right? Culture, leadership, leadership, culture. Like it's a repetitive thing we're talking about. And I think what you're speaking about is the fact that you had individuals at Boucher that said the mistakes you were making were mistakes. They were the right mistakes. They were the right kind of mistakes. And I know that sounds weird, but from a leadership perspective, I want our team, if you're going to make a mistake, let me see you make a mistake for the right reasons, right?
Hmm.
Don't, you were making mistakes because you were trying to do the right thing. You made a bad choice in the midst of that. Next thing you know, mistake happens. Okay, let's figure out and learn from it. It had nothing to do with laziness. It had nothing to do with, I just don't care about what the process is or about what we should be doing. You just made a bad choice, whether it was just being immature in the moment, really trying to learn the position. That's a leadership lesson for people that are listening. Your team can make mistakes. It needs to be a teachable moment. It's not something where let's go get HR, let's get the paperwork going. You're on your last leg. Did they make a mistake was it a good mistake?
Yeah.
And I think that those mistakes that you made, and Michael and the team identified the fact that, yeah, you were an idiot at times. You made some
Hmm.
dumb choices, but for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And that was part of your process of figuring out your way, man.
That was everything, right? It was realizing that, and I think a big note to what you just said, Chris, was, and something that my leaders taught me coming up was like, processes are ever so important. You need them. You need them as the backbone. You need them as the guideline. You need them as that true north, right? But you can't manage the process. You've got to manage the person. And for me, seeing that that's how I was treated. Yeah, the process was the process. But me as a person that was coming up, that was young, that was hungry, sometimes bit off a little bit more than I could chew because I wanted to do good for the company, for myself, for my growth, and them recognizing that the mistake, the failure, the opportunity that arose, it wasn't worth blowing up out of proportion because they knew that they were still going to be invested and that I was going to learn. And one thing big, and Edgar, one of my mentors, always told me this: it's not about the failure; it's about the response. And I think a lot of leaders understand that. A lot of people speak to that, but it's when that happens, what are your next steps? What are you doing to overcome? What are you doing to move forward? And that was always the biggest thing, is focusing on how to move forward from that particular opportunity, no matter how often it happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, let's fast forward. Boucher happens.
Yep.
Then you decide to, what happens after Boucher?
So, I was finding myself, I went from really loving creating the guest experience personally to then finding my passion for teaching people how to really create that guest experience and just caring about people to help them, move forward, help them grow, help them kind of see the opportunities that arise in this industry. So I was really passionate about doing the openings, right? I really enjoyed finding hotel operations or being invited to hotel operations that were getting ready to open up, and really give everyone that 10, 12 days of everything you absolutely had to walk away impacting someone. So that was the direction that I really wanted to get into, because that's what I found myself being most passionate about. So we're in Turks and Caicos, and I'm opening up Ritz Carlton. Happened to meet you there. Happened to see, what Ellis Adams is all about. I had the opportunity to meet Jason a few times prior to, on a couple different openings. And as I learned more about, Ellis Adams Group, and I thought, wow, this was what I've been wanting to do. I wanted to be a part of exactly that. A company that focuses on the various things that we focus on, but more so, and most importantly for me, it's that culture driven piece and how we add value coming into spaces and doing the things that we do, building the relationships that we build, and just jumping from one end, which was an incredible company that I was devoted to for 13 years, to stepping into a new world, but feeling that same feeling of, I can make an impact on somebody's life, no matter how you want to slice it.
Yeah. Um, it's funny when you made the transition and, we started this conversation. EAG has no intention of going into the the beach chair business. Boucher is the best of the best. If you're looking, we 100% say you should sign them. They are the
Yeah,
best to do it, and we
for
have no
sure.
intention of going into that space. At the same time, there's a lot of times there's a weird kind of overlay where
Hmm.
we're coming in to train, do an opening, whatever, with a team that at some point maybe hasn't decided if they're bringing on Boucher yet. Are they even going to bring on a Boucher? Are they trying to do it internally? Um, and so there was at times a gap between the two. And so there was that conversation that started that said, okay, how can we bridge the gap that says we don't want to take that business. We want to how do we almost enhance that business and be that middleman that
Yeah,
says, let me show you why you need a specialist. We're going to show you that. And then when you realize the specialist is necessary, cool, call these guys. Right.
yeah,
So finding that unique way to find that niche. So you transition to EAG. How was that how was that first 6 months of transitioning from Boucher, where you're on the sand every day, you're grinding, and then you transition to EAG, which is, again, I think culturally very similar to Boucher, but very different in what we do on a day-to-day basis.
yeah. Man, it was terrifying. um, to say the least. It was exactly that, right? Going from the hustle and bustle every single day, right? As I've always told you, I like to produce, right? And I'm used to being able to produce for my company day in and day out. And the transition was different because there was that slower period that was rather immediate. And there was speaking frankly, there was a little bit of doubt in saying like, uh-oh, did I make the right choice, right? Because of what I was used to and what I had been through, and just going day to day for so long, focusing on that. And then now it's transitioning into a company where I have to find where I fit, right? And we had conversations, me giving you a call after that first transitional period, and then I'm at home for a month. Never done that before. It was unfamiliar. I didn't know if I still had a job. I'm like, man, I hope Chris answers when I call him. But you did, and I appreciate
Your,
it. And
your paycheck was still showing up,
it
so
was still
that's a
showing up.
good
I'm
sign.
like, man, someone made a mistake for sure. But it was a little uncomfortable because I went from devoting so much of my life and time and sacrificing to be able to be that producer, to be that person that when Michael would give me a call and say, I need you to go into this place and handle this, or when I was on a property, or when I was implementing something new in training, I had to produce, and that was the daily grind that we find ourselves in. And then coming to that immediate stop, it was a little bit uncomfortable in the beginning, because I had been used to being a part of something, whether it's my team, whether it's a new implementation, whether it's a new operation, just representing a brand. And it was a slow integration process, to say the least. And I remember, I called you, and I'm sure you heard the nervousness in my voice. And you made it very clear to me. You said, listen, I trusted in you when I hired you, right? And we hadn't had too many conversations extensively outside of that prior to. And you just told me, trust in me. And that's exactly what I did. I held on. I talked myself out of going insane, being at home for the amount of time that I had been at home, because it had never happened before. And then, sure enough, right, as you said earlier, I my biggest thing was finding where I can fit and add value. And that's been my goal since I've joined the company, since the very beginning. It's what else can I do? And it's very similar to Boucher. There's a lot of things that we do that, I may not be the most familiar with, but it's the opportunity that's given to learn, to understand, to master. And it was the same thing for me when I joined Boucher Brothers. I had never been a manager before. I had never led a team before, let alone a team older than me in some cases. So learning how to manage is one thing. Learning how to manage people that are twice your age, and to build that level of respect, and finding the right way, and to be a leader, right? And I was every phase of a leader in that company. I was the pushover that was friends with everyone, and I tried to be the cool guy, and then I immediately switched over to being way too strict, and Might have gotten an OSHA complaint or two, but it's not that big of a deal. Uh, and then finding that balance of firm but fair, but still having fun, and being able to transition that into what we do here, right? And keeping that same type of mentality, keeping that same cultural element, was the best part. Once we really got the wheels rolling, and I got to see, okay, yeah, this is why I joined this group. But
How
it was scary.
I felt it. I felt it.
Yes, yes, yes.
So now, you're fully entrenched in EAG. We're going a couple years deep into this.
Yeah.
What do you think's been the biggest learning, outside of technical,
Mhm.
things that you've learned and different areas that you've been exposed to now? What do you think's been the biggest thing that's been, pro or con, that you've learned, being a part of EAG?
I think there could be a couple things, right? Like I just mentioned, for me, one of the best things is stepping into a place, where you're given an opportunity to prove yourself, right? But also learn new things, right? And I've been very fortunate to learn new aspects of an industry that I never knew before, by any stretch. We do things now in the company, or that I specifically do, that I'd never been a part of, and it's not so much being in the position to do them than it is being given the opportunity to be a part of them, if that makes sense, right?
Hmm.
I think for me, it's showing that the culture of our brand, the culture of our leadership, stemming from the top, and finding people who are willing to, grab the bull by the horns, become comfortable with being uncomfortable, and trying to master it in the best way possible. For me, is a constant reminder of who I am, and the hard work that I've put into this career, right? And constantly being challenging myself to being put in positions where I may not know it, but I'm going to learn it, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be the best at it at some point, right? Even if I'm not the best, my mentality is always in that regard, right? I love the fact that we push the envelope. And for me, that is one of my favorite aspects of being a part of this brand. Is it's always something new. It's always something fresh. It's always something. Every day is a brand new chapter when we're here. Just like you said, I'm in St. Thomas right now. Last week was LA. Before that was JW. Was Clearwater. I'm sorry. And it's like, no matter if you're doing the same thing in different places, it's a completely different story. So we continue to do all these new, fresh things, and that's by far one of my favorite aspects of what we do. And the learning is to just continue to be flexible and adaptable, continue to operate, in any way you can with the parameters that you're given, and make the best of it by adding value.
Yeah, I think, I would hope that in that process, we have you have support. You have people that, as we see, again, I think part of leadership is identifying talent and exposing it, right? Pulling out of you something you didn't realize was there. So when you're getting pulled into something, you go, wow, I've never done this before. I've got to learn it. Um, Two things are happening. One, you have somebody, a leader that sees something in you and where you can be successful in a specific area, right? That at least for us.
For sure.
But then once you're pulled into that area, you have the support attached to you that's not cool. Good luck. Throw you on an
Yeah.
island.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but it's giving you resources. It's giving you, the surrounding you with the right people to ensure that you're able to take that gift or talent that you didn't know you had and start to realize as you, get pushed a little bit, like, oh, wait a second, wait a minute, like, I, I nailed that. Oh, wait a second, that call was and you start realizing really quickly, like, I didn't realize I am good at this.
Mm.
And I think with you specifically, I've seen in multiple areas where we've positioned you strategically to watch you flourish because I knew I saw exactly that thing that I knew would be special, for those areas, and I'm watching it happen, right? And the cool thing about it is seeing you watch it happen. seeing you
Yeah,
go transition from, okay, let me figure it out, to, you know what, I'm good at this, right? It's
mm,
finding that,
for
okay,
sure.
let me find out a little bit, because that went a little bit too good, because you're finding that voice, that place, that it's not just where you belong, it's the purpose that you have inside you, and it's a matter of figuring out how to position you to maximize that. And so it's been very cool for us to watch you go from those first few calls of unsure, unsteady, what am I doing? What is my place? To now, I think it couldn't be more opposite of you being like, oh, no, 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 I know a place. Now I'm
Yeah.
figuring out. Because I think the one thing we've tried to do, and I think you've grasped probably a hold of better than almost anyone, is I'm always pushing the envelope, right? I've got stuff going on that no one knows about, like, because I want to push. You picked up on that real quick,
Hmm.
and for you, it was, I'm not trying to find my place. I'm going to write down what my place is, and hey, we don't do this yet, but we should be doing this, and this is how we're going to do it. And here's three people that I'm going to connect us with on why we should be doing it. And here's the, you basically are writing your own business models within the company of how we're going to continue to expand and grow. And I mean, you're helping our company do what you do best. Kenny G always selling, but you're selling, but you're not just selling as a salesperson. You're selling because you're passionate, because you see an opportunity, you see a gap that you know that we can fill. And it's cool to see you progress in that process for sure, man.
I no, definitely, and I appreciate that. The biggest thing um, is that I'm very prideful of having the opportunity that I have, right? Because I'm fortunate, feet are always on the ground, and I'm lucky. I'm lucky to be where I'm at. So it's every day that I'm out here putting that brand on, that representation that I have when I step outside and I interact with whoever. My mindset is I'm an ambassador. I have to represent the brand to the fullest. But beyond that, where else can we go? Right. And I think seeing that mindset from you right off the jump definitely gave me the confidence to be able to say, all right, cool. Well, I know he's willing to figure out things that he probably doesn't even have on his docket just yet. I'm going to join the club and we'll figure it out. Right. We'll figure it out. And I always reach out to you prior, but I'm always looking at where, what, how, different angles, and just thinking, right? Always just throwing stones, trying to see where they will land. But I think just as much as you, and I think that's the beauty about our company, is that each and every one of us look at it as how can we continue to grow this thing? How can we continue to just bring in new value, new opportunity, new elements of expansion, so on and so forth. And you say it all the time, or at least I say it all the time. Like I'm always going to keep swinging. I'm always going to keep swinging. Every person that I meet, and this is a saying that I always tell people: every interaction is an opportunity. Every single interaction is an opportunity, whether you're working on the beach, servicing a guest, you're taking an order, you're passing someone in the hallway, right? What does that interaction look like? And when you pass that person, are they going to remember you or not? So I take every interaction as an opportunity to not only explain what our brand's all about, but showcase the level that we're at and the opportunities that we could provide to other people, other places, other areas that may need the help. And whether it sticks or not, that interaction is going to be something that they remember, right? Whether they
Yeah.
remember it as Kenny G gave me the whole, book of services and all I did was meet him. And it's never pushy. My mindset is I just want to make you aware. I just want to let you know. But I'm always looking at that exact thing, that opportunity. Where is it? What can we do? Who can we connect with to continue to blow up our brand?
Yeah, and I think the word opportunity keeps coming up, and I want to spin on that for 1 second. That says, we talked about those individuals that are trying to figure out life. They could be young, they could not be young, just trying to figure out with their place, their purpose, what's next. We talked about the industry, hospitality in general, it's struggling from a labor perspective. I think from a people spending money, there's no struggle right now. People are spending money like it's growing on
Oh
trees,
yeah.
but the labor aspect, there's a challenge right now. And when I look at the opportunity piece, I don't think people truly understand what opportunities lay in front of you in this industry. And it becomes very frustrating when you hear people talk about hospitality as though it's a pass through job. Well, I did this while I was really trying to do something else,
Yeah.
not realizing what hospitality is an unbelievable career that can provide unbelievable opportunities for those that take it seriously. And I think you could speak to that for God knows how long of saying, I just like myself, I didn't graduate college, and
No.
to take individuals that say that wasn't my path, and then that's not for everyone. I'm not here promoting in any way, shape, or form that school's not the best thing for you. But if we're talking about individuals in our industry that have everything from degrees from Ivy League schools to those that never finished college, that are at the top of the food chain, that are getting opportunities to travel the world, to see things that less than 1% will ever see or experience, to eat in locations that most will never get to eat at, to meet people that you never thought you would get to meet, to go to countries and locations that 99.9% of the world will never get to experience. This field, this industry, they give it to you on a silver platter. They hand it
Yeah.
to you, and it's one of very few industries that will do that for you. All you have to do is recognize the opportunity, show up even when it hurts, and give your absolute damn best. If you do that, the opportunities are endless, and speak to that. How many countries have you been to? What have you been able to experience? Where have you been able to eat? Things you get to do, not once, not like, oh my God, that was a vacation. I'm talking on a regular, every few weeks. Speak to just a few minutes, touch on for those that might be watching on what's out there as an opportunity to be in this industry.
I will never forget the first time I left the country to do an opening, and it was an edition opening, and it was the most mind-boggling thing because I was going across the world to Bodrum, Turkey, and I didn't know where Bodrum was. Had to look it up on a map, and I'll never forget landing in Bodrum and getting to the hotel and kind of being in shock when I stopped into that space, stepped into it for the very first time, and taking a look at what the view was, and realizing I'm here. This is real, right? And I think that's where I caught that bug as well. Same thing, having the opportunity to do Greece, right? Having the opportunity to hit Abu Dhabi, go to Dubai, which are places that coming out of where I'm from in Tennessee, that it's possible to go to some of these places, but you don't really understand how possible it is, right? It's kind of like more out of reach. I think this year alone we've hit Chile for the very first time, Bolivia, which is incredible. All through Mexico, like there's no tomorrow. The Caribbean as a whole, Turks and Caicos, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, St. Thomas multiple times, Aruba, um, to name a few. It's one of those things where it's like you really are able to see what this industry can give you back, right? And a little bit of hard work, like you said. Another saying that's very important to me is no one's going to do for you what you aren't willing to do for yourself. If you want to see the world, you got to go get it, right? And this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to eat in some of these places that you're saying, right? Like I've been very fortunate to have dinners that, I mean, I'll go home afterwards and think to myself, did that really just happen? And it's all because I saw the opportunity. And I think that's what lacks a little bit in a lot of spaces, is that people don't really recognize what could be in front of them because they don't see the forest, they focus on the tree. And if they just shift their perspective a little bit and they look what else is beyond there, and really understand what this industry can give. And just like you said, a lot of people see it as passing through. And that's always been something that I've been passionate about, and sharing my story and my travels, and the opportunities, right? I think an opportunity, or something to talk about that I think is very important, at least to me personally as well, was having the opportunity to be the service consultant for the Miami Marlins for various seasons, right? And so maybe that wasn't necessarily a traveling gig, but we've replaced one of the largest training platforms in the world, and that was Disney. And no knock on Disney by any means, but the Marlins were able to see that through Boucher Brothers, there was a group of young individuals that were very passionate about service, and they brought us in to help develop their culture. And we had the opportunity to impact thousands of guests in one night. You're talking 9,000 people. So I hold that with just as much weight as being able to fly across the world and see the things that I have and do the things that I've been able to do, because it's all about taking advantage of every single knock at the door. You have to
You know,
answer.
I tell you, and I look at our phones, and we live in a world right now that's, we've called it a Burger King society. My way, right away. It's a right now, right? I can click a
Yep.
button and get anything I want right now, thanks to our technology. The problem with that is that's now translated into every part and aspect of people's lives. And there's no sense of true time. So in their minds, I'm going to start this job with the expectation in their minds, just like I can click on my phone and an Uber shows up 9 minutes later. I'm going to start this job and I'm going to be the general manager next week. Well, I don't, I'm going to be, well, how come I'm not on a plane going to Dubai yet? And not understanding or realizing the hard work. Are you willing to put in the work? Are you willing to actually just to bust your tail, to have days that, dude, do you know how many times, launching this or even before this, when I worked for Ritz Carlton, I would get home and just be beat up, like
Mhm.
physically hurt from what I was physically having to do it at times. Yet you get up the next day and you keep going and you keep pushing for the possibility of what could be.
Yep.
Nothing was guaranteed to me, nothing was guaranteed to you, but you recognized at some point what possibly could be. I don't know if I'm going to get it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to launch that company. I don't know if they're going to choose me to go open that hotel and fly across the world or go eat at that dinner. I don't know if I'm going to get it. But there's a possibility of, if I just push, if I just keep fighting hard, if I just get up again. And unfortunately, we live in that world that after 6 months of grinding, it's like, oh, this ain't worth it, man. There's no growth. There's no this. They're not doing this. And I'm like, you don't realize what's at your fingertips. And it doesn't mean you have to stay with the same company for 35 years to get there. But does it mean that you keep grinding? Yeah. Does it mean you keep getting up every day? Yeah. And in the midst of that getting up, you might transition from Boucher to EAG. That doesn't mean that Boucher did something wrong. It doesn't mean that you were done with Boucher, that you were fed up. But the grinding every day opened up the next opportunity for you. And there might come a point in time, God forbid, that EAG transitions Kenny G to the next thing. Why? Because he gets up every day and he keeps grinding and he keeps pushing, even on the days that it might not feel like doing it. But in the process of it, you're jumping on a plane and you're flying to Dubai. You're jumping on a plane and you're looking at the beach in St. Thomas. You're jumping on a plane and you're opening the St. Regis in Kenai.
Oh yeah.
Those things happen because you keep doing it. And the
Yep.
opportunities start to unfold, and you realize the older you get, wow, it really wasn't that long ago that I was yanking pool chairs down
Yeah.
the beach in an all white outfit, hurting, going, why am I doing this? That wasn't 35 years ago. It wasn't that long ago that you realize now I'm sitting in a suite in an air conditioned room in St. Thomas doing a podcast, right? But because you got up every day, because there was an opportunity and the possibility of, no one's going to give it
Yep.
to you, man. You're not owed anything. You're not
No.
owed anything. Are you willing to get up every day and fight for it? And man, I can't be more proud of you, what you've done to get to this point. Um, and I'll be honest with you, and I guarantee you, if it was me, you, and Michael doing this podcast together, he'd be saying the same things. This is just scratching the surface of what's next. Today, that we think is where we're at, is literally the beginning of where you're supposed to be. And it excites me for what the future has in store for you, because of who you are, because of what you represent, because of not just the grind and the fact that you put in the hard work, but you're finding your space. You're
Yeah,
figuring out who you are. You're pushing yourself into your purpose, and the fact that we get to be a part of that in a very small way, and get to be along your journey, it excites me. It's an honor to be a part of it alongside you, man. So, thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you for all that you're going to continue to do.
for sure.
But so, if anybody wants to follow along on this ridiculous journey with you, um, are you on social media?
Yeah, 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 yeah. For the most part, for the most
Man,
part.
here or
Yeah,
there.
I'm here and there. I'm here and there. I'm here and there. Yeah. Instagram, the LinkedIn, we'll get going again. I've been focused on exactly what you said, right? I'm focusing on, expanding the brand. I'm focusing on building myself, mastering the opportunities that are being presented in my way, being, a beacon to those who are coming off of Craigslist, right? That's the
Love it.
focus. And in the meantime, when I can share something on the socials, I absolutely will. But the focus right now is definitely the grind. But I'm always here if anyone wants to tap in and just hear a little bit more about it, because it's important to me, for me to show people that you can come out of a small place and grind a little and get the opportunities that we've been given, for sure.
I love that. I love that. Feel free to follow along Kenny's journey, as well as ours at EAG and myself. You can find us on Instagram at Ellis Adams Official, or myself at Chris Adams _ EAG. Please keep tuning in each and every week. We're going to have amazing people just like Kenny G hanging out with us, just to give insight. And, like I keep saying over and over, I just had a conversation with someone about this, Kenny, is why do we do the podcast? I don't care if only one person listens this week or one person tunes in and sees. Is it going to help someone? Is there one person that says, man, dude, today was the day I just needed that because I'm going to get up tomorrow because I realize there's opportunity in this. And if
Oh
we can
yeah,
help that one person and keep helping this industry grow, then it's worth our time to sit and have great conversations with great people. So thanks for hanging out and tuning in. We look
for
forward to
sure.
seeing you next week. And, we'll see you on the journey. Stick around in the
Appreciate
Talkie
it.
Town. It's worth it.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you so much, Chris. Greatly appreciate it, man.